I don't think we have ever came across South Korean project. I might say something that is not totally accurate, but I don't think we have ever managed. I think there was something in Seoul about, I don't know if it was an international competition years ago, but I don't know if it was an international competition or if it was, or maybe we tried to apply and then we didn't get through. It happens sometimes that you are so far away that you team up with the wrong people and then you don't pass through pre-qualification stage. So of course we constantly apply, and now my colleague Lina Bang is not here, she's on the PQ officer, so the pre-qualification officer. Right. So probably if I ask her, did we ever apply to something in South Korea? She's gonna go, yeah, we applied for this and that. This was in '84 and the other one was, could be something like that. But we haven't been successful enough. That doesn't mean that we're not interested, we are always interested. I mean, yes, we have, and one could say we don't have, of course. When you start going a little bit too big and a little bit too international, you risk being generic, which is something that you don't want to be, right? So of course we try to transmit at least some Scandinavian values, which usually goes in quality of space, light condition, and the tactical part of it, like the texture, the warmth, so like the touch of the projects. But if you ask a little bit like what is the thing that makes us most commonly known, I would say that it's the atriums. We do atriums. Atrium buildings. Yeah. We do a lot of projects with atrium buildings. I was just office projects that has these characteristics. So if we talk about like residential projects, so of course we most certainly go not in that same approach, and then it's going to be more like the kind of housing units that you see in Scandinavia that we kind of try to bring and merge with local knowledge. So you also want to say it's the most postmodernistic glass house with no characteristics and just throw it in South Korea. You try to understand the preconditions of South Korea and try to merge what are the good values of Scandinavia with the good local identity. I think we use the atrium as that social gathering point in different buildings. It's the common point where people meet together and can even create like spontaneous synergies. Where if you work on a building like this, and you are sitting here, and the other colleague is sitting over there, and this is a 100-meter long plan, you will never meet this guy if you don't have some centralized point, which could be the canteen. It doesn't have to be an atrium. It could be some sort of common social area where you can talk and meet. Hey, so what are you working on and what are you doing? So we see the atrium as that social gathering point for the communities.
Right.
The answer is typically no, because Denmark does not operate with a fixed table of fee. There is, of course, a general, a common frame that our contract manager takes into consideration in relation to the size of the project. Right? So if we're talking about 100,000 square meters office, then with a lot of repetition, then you could maybe say that it's reasonable to talk about, let's say, 8% fee. Right? If you're doing but if we are doing a high-rise, it's actually not so tall, it's very simple. Maybe there's so much repetition on that floor plan that maybe you negotiate all the way down to 5% or whatever. But if you were doing 11 different single-family houses, you might need to go all the way up to 15%. because the complexity and the lack of repetition gonna demand a lot of paper, a lot of work, a lot of ideas, a lot of changes. I mean, it's a really hard question because it depends if we're doing, let me see, if we're doing the Tianjin master plan and going through building permits, we're talking about a 1 square kilometer project with a lot of traffic analysis and information that needs to go through authorities. We might be talking about 4 months, maybe just to, or more, maybe a full year, just to go through and get like the approval so that this building can be this tall, the neighbor can be a little taller, but it has to be slimmer so that there's still not good light conditions in the street at street level. The streets has to be this big, but the secondary streets can be a little narrow. So of course, it depends if we are doing what could it be that we are doing. If we're doing the pavilion, the one with the ropes, that one we did it like in a month. A month and a half with all the way. Maybe it's 3 weeks to come up with a concept, and then 3-4 weeks to further develop it into a stage where they could build that. But that is really like letting go of the design. That's like, I wanted to do a bottom, and I just say, okay, a bottom is going to be something like this, and it has a hole over there, and from now on you take care of it. You decide the color, you decide the name, the label, the design. That's kind of the situation with the pavilion. We only said we want to do a pavilion with ropes, should be this kind of rope, should be white. The rope should be, made a plan, the rope should be like this, creating some kind of domes. But then of course the local design institute in Shanghai calculated everything, and then of course we came back and forth, like, don't bring me a slab this thick. They tried to make something that's slimmer, but they were doing a lot of the drawings. So then you lose quality control. We have 2 departments. One is the concept development department, and the other one is the project development department. If you are young and green and very fresh out from school, you're going to be most certainly suitable to fit into the concept development department, because facing facts, you know very little compared to the guys that have been working for 20-30 years. The guys that have been working for 20-30 years, they're not so fresh anymore. So they know how to build a building, but they might not be so up to date, or they might not be so willing to work a lot or knowing the latest trends or whatever. They just know how to make a good project. So typically you would have a more younger staff doing competition work, concept development, feasibility studies, volume studies, and then you would have a project department that also can contain some of these young conceptual designers in the team, but you would find all the architectural technologists, which are technical architects, and all the senior architects. The thing is, of course, as you say, it used to be like a stepping stone. You get out of school, you get a competition job, then you start going, slowly get into a project, and in 30 years you know how to build a house from A to Z. These days have been a little different. The process has been a little different, and you can see that the level of competition, requests and demands and expectations and complexities of the assignments is quite large. So for instance, in my particular case, that I have been a professional for 15 years, but I'm still in charge of the concept development department, and I've been doing competitions for the last maybe 8 years, actually, because once I was getting more into projects, we just realized that also my strong sides were in concept development, but also my experience actually was helpful to support the young staff to put together a 100